Loudspeaker disclaimer. This story is a work of dramatic fiction based on emotional themes of real-life situations. It contains sensitive topics such as infidelity, emotional neglect, and complicated family relationships. The purpose is to explore human emotions and decisions, not to promote or glorify any immoral behavior. All characters, places, and events are fictional, and any resemblance to real people or situations is purely coincidental. Reader discretion is advised. That Sunday had been unusually quiet. My husband, Eric, was asleep upstairs after another late night out. The kind of late night I had stopped questioning a long time ago. Our marriage had quietly slipped into a routine, one where silence spoke louder than words and touches were few and far between. I was in the kitchen, absent-mindedly stirring my tea, when I heard the back door creak open. Aiden, Eric's younger brother, stepped in. He wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't live with us. But he had a habit of dropping by, just like that, unannounced. He looked at me with that familiar boyish grin. "Hey, let's go outside," he said casually, nodding toward the back porch. I paused. "Why?" He shrugged. "You look like you need a break. Just for a few minutes." There was something in the way he said it, gentle, understanding. The kind of softness I hadn't felt in a while. I followed him without thinking much, as if some invisible part of me wanted to feel, noticed. Outside, the garden was quiet, and the evening breeze carried the smell of damp grass. Aiden sat on the steps, patting the spot next to him. I sat, keeping a careful distance, but not so far that we couldn't talk softly. "I haven't seen you smile in weeks," he said. That made me look at him. "That obvious?" He didn't answer. Just gave me a small smile, then stared ahead. We talked for a while, about small things. His new job, my work-from-home routine, how Eric had been busy lately. There were no accusations, no judgments. Just acknowledgement of what both of us had already noticed, but never said aloud. Then, as I reached to grab a fallen leaf from the step, his hand brushed mine. Lightly. Accidentally. But the way his fingers curled for a second around mine, it didn't feel like an accident. We both froze for a moment. Time slowed down. Then he quickly stood up, brushing imaginary dust from his jeans. "I should get going," he mumbled. I nodded, unsure of what just happened, but also aware something had changed. As he walked away, I sat there with my heart pounding, not from guilt, but from something far more dangerous, attention. That was the moment everything began. Quiet, simple, and unforgettable. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Eric was already gone. No note. No message. Just the familiar cold spot on the bed next to me. That used to make me sad. Now, it just made me empty. But what lingered was the memory of yesterday. Aiden's touch. The way his fingers brushed mine. The way his eyes held something unspoken. It was just a touch, small, fleeting, but it sparked something I had buried long ago. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But it did. Later that day, I tried to distract myself, cleaning, organizing shelves, folding laundry that didn't need folding. But everything felt louder. The silence in the house. The ticking clock. My own thoughts. And then, like clockwork, my phone buzzed. A message from Aiden. "Aiden, hey, sorry about yesterday. Hope I didn't make things weird." My heart skipped. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back. "Me, no, it's okay. I actually enjoyed the company." The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. "Aiden, you sure?" It just felt different. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't answer right away. I sat with that feeling. Different. Yes, that was exactly it. The way he looked at me, listened to me, noticed me, it was different. It wasn't just affection. It was attention. And after years of emotional starvation, that kind of attention is dangerously addictive. A few hours later, there was a knock on the door. I opened it, surprised to see Aiden again, holding a coffee in one hand and a bag of pastries in the other. "Peace offering," he said, lifting them. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." We sat at the kitchen table. Talked. Laughed. Avoided the elephant in the room. Until there was a pause, a silence thick with tension. I'm not trying to mess things up, he said suddenly, his voice serious. But I see you, you know? And I hate that Eric doesn't. I looked away. I couldn't cry. Not in front of him. Not over this. Aiden, I whispered, unsure of what came next. And then, gently, he placed his hand over mine again. Not forcefully. Just there. And this time, I didn't pull away. I should have. I knew that. But I didn't. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt wanted. And that's when I knew. Something inside me had shifted. It was no longer just a touch. It was the beginning of a choice. The days that followed were quiet on the surface, but inside, I was unraveling. Eric kept his usual routine, late nights at the office, distracted dinners, and the occasional fake smile when we crossed paths in the hallway. We barely spoke more than a few sentences a day. I used to cry about it, but lately, I just went numb. Except when I thought about Aiden. What started as a moment, a touch, a look, turned into something far more dangerous. Our conversations became daily. Texts throughout the day. Little check-ins. Aiden, did you eat? Me, trying. Just working. Aiden, don't forget to take care of yourself. Small things. But they meant everything. I had been starving for that kind of care. Aiden didn't ask for anything in return. He just gave it. Consistently. Gently. One night, Eric came home later than usual. I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. He reeked of alcohol and unfamiliar perfume. He slipped under the covers without a word. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. My heart wasn't breaking, it was already broken. That's when I stopped feeling guilty. The next morning, I met Aiden for coffee. We sat in his car, parked by the lake. I told myself I wasn't cheating. It was just coffee. Just talking. But we both knew it was more. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my cheek longer than they should have. My breath caught in my throat, and I looked away. You don't have to stay in something that's killing you, he whispered. I'm not leaving Eric, I said quickly. Why? He asked, voice soft but firm. Because I had no answer. Not one I could admit out loud. Because I was scared. Because I didn't want to be that woman. Because Aiden deserved better than being a secret. But we were already there. In too deep. Even if nothing physical had happened, yet. That night, Eric didn't come home. No call. No explanation. I sat on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, the clock ticking past midnight. Then my phone buzzed. Aiden, you okay? I stared at the screen, tears blurring my vision. And in that moment, I typed the one thing I shouldn't have. Me, can you come over? Secrets start small. But they grow fast. And once they take root, they don't let go. I sat on the living room couch, hugging my knees, watching the clock tick past 12:47 a.m. The house was dim and quiet, except for the occasional creak of wood or the distant hum of a car passing outside. Eric still hadn't called. Still hadn't come home. And then, headlights flashed through the curtains. A soft knock followed moments later. I opened the door slowly. Aiden stood there, hoodie pulled up, eyes full of concern. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. I stepped aside, letting him in. His presence alone was calming, steady. Safe. Are you okay? He asked gently, taking in the redness around my eyes, the blanket I had wrapped around me like armor. I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just tired. You don't have to lie to me. That simple sentence, spoken with quiet conviction, shattered the last of my self-control. I collapsed into his arms, my body trembling from the weight of all I had been holding in. He didn't say anything. He just held me. Tightly. Warmly. I hadn't felt held like that in years. After a while, we sat side by side on the couch. Neither of us moved. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was charged. Like something waiting to ignite. I'm sorry I called you, I whispered. I'm not, he said without hesitation. I turned to face him, our knees touching. He reached out, brushed a tear from my cheek, and his hand didn't pull away this time. It moved slowly to cut my face. Why are you doing this? I asked, voice barely audible. Because I care about you. Because you deserve more than to be forgotten. My eyes burned. My heart pounded. I should have stopped it. I knew that. But I didn't. When his lips touched mine, the world went quiet. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was tender. Filled with things we hadn't said but had both been feeling. The kiss deepened. My hands found his shirt. His fingers tangled in my hair. The blanket slipped off my shoulders. His breath hitched against my skin. I pulled away for a second, trembling. "This isn't right," I whispered. "But does it feel wrong?" he asked softly, searching my face. And it didn't. That was the worst part. It felt like something I had been waiting for without even realizing it. We didn't go all the way that night. But the line had been crossed. And we both knew there was no going back. He stayed until I fell asleep, curled up beside me on the couch like a quiet shield against the world. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone, but the scent of his cologne lingered on the pillow. So did the guilt. And the desire. Everything had changed. And we had just begun to fall. The next morning, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face was the same eyes, same lips, same tired lines under them. But I couldn't look at myself the same way. I had crossed a line. A line I used to judge others for. A line I swore I'd never even approach. But it wasn't just about that kiss. It was about what it meant. For years, I had been silently dying in my marriage, bit by bit. Eric had stopped seeing me, loving me, even touching me with warmth. And now someone else had stepped into the space he abandoned. Aiden. I hated myself for feeling everything I wasn't supposed to feel. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. That one night had awakened a part of me I thought had died. And now, it wouldn't go back to sleep. Later that day, Eric finally showed up. He didn't apologize for disappearing. He didn't ask how I was. He just grabbed a sandwich, scrolled through his phone, and asked where his clean socks were. That was it. That was all I needed to realize how far gone we were. Still, guilt clung to me like second skin. Every time Aiden's name flashed on my phone, my chest tightened. Every message from him came with equal parts excitement and dread. Aiden, thinking about you. Me, I shouldn't be letting this happen. Aiden, then why does it feel so real? It wasn't lust. It wasn't an affair born out of recklessness. It was deeper. More dangerous. It was emotional intimacy, the very thing that binds souls together. And I was already bound to him in ways I couldn't explain. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Eric walked by me without a word again. That was his pattern now. Come home, eat, ignore me, sleep. Suddenly, something inside me broke. I followed him to the bedroom. "Do you still love me?" I asked. He looked confused, annoyed even. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." He paused, rubbed his eyes. "Of course I do. Don't be dramatic." But his words were empty. Mechanical. Like he said them because they were required, not because he felt them. That night, I sat in the dark after he had fallen asleep. I picked up my phone, hovered over Aiden's name. And I typed me, "Can I see you tomorrow?" My fingers trembled as I hit send. I was already spiraling, already lost in something I couldn't control. I closed my eyes, wondering when I stopped recognizing the woman I had become. But deep down, I knew I had stopped being me the moment Eric stopped loving me. It was raining the next day when I drove to Aiden's apartment. The sky was gray, but my heart was louder than the thunder outside. I had told myself this wasn't going to happen. I had promised myself I'd stay in control. But control was a distant memory now. He opened the door as if he had been waiting for me all morning. No words were spoken. We stood there, the sound of rain behind us, our eyes doing all the talking. "You're soaked," he whispered, reaching to touch my arm. "I shouldn't be here," I replied, but I didn't move. I couldn't. "You keep saying that," he said gently, "but you keep coming back." He was right. The moment he touched my face, all the guilt I had been holding crumbled beneath the weight of longing. I had spent years begging to feel this, wanted, seen, craved. It didn't matter that it wasn't Eric. It mattered that I felt alive. His lips found mine again, but this time, it wasn't just a kiss. It was surrender. Piece by piece, layer by layer, I let him into my arms, into my body, into my secrets. There was nothing rushed about it. No careless urgency. It was slow, tender, electric. The kind of intimacy I had forgotten was possible. Not just lust, but love wrapped in forbidden timing. We made love like two people starved for warmth, desperate to feel something real. And when it was over, we didn't speak. We just laid there, breathing in the silence. My head on his chest, his fingers tracing the curve of my spine. In that moment, I wasn't a wife. I was a woman. A woman who had been ignored, dismissed, unloved, and who now, finally, felt worshipped. But when the sun began to peek through the clouds and the rain stopped, so did my peace. Reality came rushing back like a wave. I sat up slowly, wrapped in the blanket of what we had just done. "Aiden," I whispered, unable to meet his eyes. "What now?" He sat up beside me. "Now, we figure it out." "What if there's nothing to figure out?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "What if this is just wrong?" He looked at me, not with regret, but with truth. "If it was wrong, you wouldn't keep choosing it." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. I had chosen him. Not once, but over and over. The line wasn't blurry anymore. It had been crossed, burned, erased. And I had let it happen. Now the question was, what was I willing to lose for the feeling of being found? The days after that night were a blur, emotionally heavy, soaked in confusion. I returned home pretending nothing had changed, but everything had. I had changed. And somehow, even if I tried to hide it, the air around me carried the truth like perfume clinging to my skin. Eric noticed, finally. Not in the way I had always hoped, though. Not because he saw me with fresh eyes or felt guilty for his absence. No. He noticed because my silence was no longer desperate, it was detached. My sadness was no longer a plea, it was quiet acceptance. One evening, I stepped out of the shower and found him sitting on the edge of the bed, holding my phone. His face was pale, jaw clenched, veins pulsing under the skin of his temples. "I saw the messages," he said flatly. My body froze. I didn't ask how. I didn't deny it. What was the point? "You and Aiden," he asked, his voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. I swallowed hard. My breath caught somewhere between guilt and defiance. "It wasn't supposed to happen," I whispered. "But it did," he shot back. "With my brother." The words echoed in the room, sharp like broken glass. I wrapped the towel tighter around myself, as if that could shield me from the collapse. "You weren't here, Eric," I said, finally breaking. "You haven't been here in years." "That doesn't give you the right to destroy everything," he shouted. "Everything was already destroyed," I snapped. "You just didn't notice it crumbling." He stood up, eyes filled with a kind of hurt I hadn't seen from him in a long time. "So, what now? Are you leaving me for him?" I didn't know the answer. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I sank to the floor, heart pounding, soul splitting. My phone buzzed. "Aiden. Aiden, I think he knows. Are you okay?" I didn't respond. For the first time since this began, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I had tried to fix a broken heart with another heartbeat. I had tried to fill silence with whispers from someone who wasn't mine. Now it was all out. The lie had been exposed. The storm was here. And there was no going back. The days that followed felt like I was walking through the wreckage of two lives, mine and Eric's. Everything lay scattered. The trust, the years, the memories. Our home no longer felt like a home. It felt like a graveyard of the life we used to have. Eric barely spoke to me after that night. He slept in the guest room. No fights. No begging. Just cold, heavy silence. And sometimes, silence is louder than screaming. Aiden reached out again and again. "Aiden, let me come see you. Aiden, we need to talk. Aiden, please don't shut me out." But I didn't answer. Not right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know how to face either of them. What started as loneliness turned into a secret, and that secret turned into destruction. I had broken something sacred. Not just a marriage. A family. A bond between brothers. I stood at the window one morning, watching the rain fall again, the same kind of rain that followed the night I first crossed the line. Everything looked the same outside. But inside, nothing was the same. Later that evening, Eric sat across from me at the dining table. He looked older, tired, defeated. I'm filing for separation, he said, his voice flat. I nodded. I understand. He stared at me for a long moment, then asked, Do you love him? I paused, tears pooling in my eyes. I don't know what love means anymore. That was the honest truth. Because love wasn't supposed to hurt this much. It wasn't supposed to destroy more than it healed. When Eric walked out that night with a single suitcase in hand, he didn't look back. And I didn't chase him. The next day, I met Aiden at the park. We sat on the same bench where we once laughed like nothing mattered. His face lit up when he saw me, but he could tell something was different. I lost everything, I whispered. He took my hand. Not everything. But I pulled it away. Aiden. I can't be with you. Not like this. Not now. He looked stunned. Why? Because it wasn't built on truth. It was built on pain. On betrayal. And if I stay, I'll never heal. He didn't try to stop me. He just nodded, slowly, understanding that this goodbye was real. We both looked ahead, toward the lake, toward something that felt like closure, even if it came without peace. As I walked away from both of them, from Eric, from Aiden, from the woman I used to be, I realized something. Not every story ends in love. Some end in lessons. And some goodbyes don't come with closure, just consequences. But even in the ruin, I found a beginning. A beginning that started with me. Alone. But finally free.